Thanks for checking out the Chris in Retro podcast. This is a two-part series with Roger O'Brien. Part 1 starts now.
Well, welcome back to the Chris in Retro podcast. Today, my guest is Atlas Award-winning CEO and owner of O'Brien Associates. Welcome to the show, my friend and trusted advisor, Roger O'Brien.
Thank you, Chris. Hello. Good morning.
Appreciate you coming. Yeah, Roger's got an extensive experience. He was Chief Operating Officer for Ultralife Batteries. He was a Chief Executive Officer for Haltech. He has a number of awards. He's been in an advisory role as well as a position in a number of large corporations throughout his career, and has really found a niche at this point with his own business. And I'd like to just start by giving my audience a little bit of background about who you are professionally and personally.
Yeah, it's complicated. And I know that's a punchline, but it is.
Yeah.
So I will first say that I have lived or visited in every state in the continental U.S. And no, I wasn't an Army brat, but my dad had a number of jobs and assignments, and we had a number of vacations to other states. This is pre-teen for me. So by the age of 13, I was able to make that statement, lived or visited every state.
I did not.
And I think that had a lot to do with my effectiveness in my current work as a consultant. I have been an advisor, consultant, interim CEO for 25 years now. I'll tell you very quickly a bit more about my prior background. But having exposure to that many different regions of the country, and of course I've been international as well, but more so in the U.S., it made me resilient and adapting. And you have to be a chameleon, I think, to be an effective consultant and perhaps to be an effective professional manager in an organization. Because everybody's different. You've got to adapt. You've got to discern what their values are, their cultures. I'm getting a little deep now, but
No.
I just wanted to say, I think that early childhood experience really helped form me.
I find that interesting. I didn't know that about you, but you think about that type of an experience, it could go either way. You could either really be accepting and adaptable, or you could be very isolated because you're not connected with anything.
Well, I have met many people who were Army brats, let's say, and had to travel different places or live in different locations every 3 years, sometimes internationally. Some of them didn't do well with it. It made them very insecure. I think I understand that because they never had any lasting friends. But in my case, it made me gregarious. It made me outreaching, although that didn't really manifest strongly until later in my professional career. But looking back, I think it gave me tools to do that. I didn't want to sit in a corner, figuratively, while the world was going on around me. I had to jump in and get with it.
So you're saying that the accomplishments that you have didn't happen overnight? Even personality-wise.
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, Chris, as you know, we're all a work in process.
Yeah.
Always. And, well, let me just give our audience I really don't want to bore you. And I am bored with my own background, but I'll just share with you my journey over the past years. Was born in California, but predominantly grew up in the Northeast, and got an engineering degree. I was not a very good high school student at all, I have to tell you, and got into a 4-year college by the skin of my teeth out of high school, and then blossomed. I discovered I enjoyed learning. I kind of found myself. I was definitely a late bloomer academically.
Do you think the
so after my
do you think the high school issue was related to your moving around, or
No, because I was pretty adaptable in that. I spent more time playing guitar with my band than I did studying. I
Okay,
just didn't, it didn't relate.
there you go.
So that's another element I can share with you. But anyway, so I went to college for a year in Pennsylvania, and then blossomed academically and transferred to New York University in
Hmm.
NYC into engineering school and got a degree in nuclear engineering, of all things. Back then, it was a very promising industry, nuclear. And so I worked as a nuclear design engineer for one of the major vendors of nuclear reactors for sale to utilities like RG&E
Hmm.
for 3 years. And in the course of my work, I guess in year 2 or 3, I was giving a small team to manage and a budget, and I started to get more exposure to business, like revenue, customers,
Hmm.
novel concepts for me at the time. And I was intrigued by it. I was very curious about what made business click,
Hmm.
what what makes a good business and what makes a bad business. So I took a leave of absence from my engineering employer, which was in the Hartford, Connecticut area, and went off to Philadelphia to get an MBA and just unplugged for 2 years to just do the MBA. And then was hired by Xerox Corporation in Rochester. And that was my first introduction to Rochester, New York.
Hmm.
Um,
I find
I worked,
I think that
I worked,
you just made the biggest understatement on the show ever. You said that
what was that?
you blossomed. You went from underachieving high school student to a nuclear engineer in
Yeah,
2 years
well,
or something.
I guess anything's possible, right?
It sounds like it was a focus issue, not a skill set.
I don't know. As you know, Chris, and many of our audience may relate to this,
Hmm.
you can be a late bloomer in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
You can be a late bloomer academically, you can be a late bloomer in terms of social interaction. Um, we all kind of develop at different ways, but usually by about 20 to 25 years old, people settle down and they're starting to figure themselves out. So, enough said.
Yeah.
Anyway, I worked for Xerox in Rochester and in LA, actually El Segundo, California, um, and then left Xerox ultimately. And for the next 10 years, worked for 3 or 4 Fortune 500 large organizations in the roles of controller, CFO, strategic planning manager, that type of thing.
For
Um,
for the professionals that are tuning into the show,
yeah.
one of the questions that actually just came up in the last guest I had was talking about the road less traveled, and finding that in terms of career success. Was this
Mm-hmm.
something for you? Did you just find the next opportunity, the next move just sort of manifest itself? Or at some point, did you really start to establish a vision for what you wanted for your future? Because it sounds like a lot of moves along the way here. Um, Hindsight, it seemed logical. Hearing the
Yeah.
story, it doesn't necessarily.
For those first, let's say, 10 years, I was enjoying my work, and predominantly I was a finance analysis strategic planning professional, eventually in the C suite roles. Um, I think my goals at the time were just onward and upward, and
Mhm.
I tended, looking back, I tended to power down rather quickly after I got into a new role. That may sound immature, but I've discovered I need constant challenges, constant learning,
Mhm.
and that's what drove it. So what happened was with all of those moves, it was a search firm. It was a headhunter that reached out to me and said, "Hey, we have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity there." And I didn't take every one. I evaluated them, but it ended up being a good growth curve. But I probably didn't spend more than 3 years in any one company at that point in my career. Then I found myself in Silicon Valley, as an early officer of Sun Microsystems,
Mhm.
which was a really high-flying computer company that ultimately was bought by Oracle, who many of our listeners will know.
Mhm.
And I burned out on big corporate America while I was there. I realized that you can be a significant person in the organization chart, if we look at it that way, but uh, politics enter. Obviously, there's politics in every organization. And increasingly, I was going home at the end of the day out there in Silicon Valley. This is years ago. Reflecting on what value I added to either customers or shareholders in my work.
Mhm.
And it was like 25%. I said, well, what did I spend the rest of the week on? It was fighting with people over budgets and jockeying on policies and,
Mhm.
things that you have to cope with and deal with in organizations, especially large ones, but don't add value to the ultimate stakeholder.
Or you,
So,
or you
so
personally and your own goals.
or me personally,
Yeah.
right? Because we all like to know that we do work for a deserving stakeholder, and it's good value add, and they appreciate it. I mean, that's what we want. That cycle. You want to feel you've added value, and you want to feel it's appreciated. That's
Mhm.
better than a paycheck, ultimately.
Right.
Although we all need paychecks. So I left Sun and consulted in Silicon Valley, and then decided, I'd like to scratch my entrepreneurial itch. So at the same time, I wanted to move my family. I now had 3 young children back to the Rochester area, where again I am not from, but I've always felt Rochester is one of the best places to raise a family in terms of education opportunities, uh, changing seasons.
Mhm.
We're coming up on winter for Rochester,
Yep.
so and quality of life and cost of living. Rochester's a great deal, and I can't tell you how many people I've spoken with. You may feel this way as well, Chris, who feel that way about Rochester. They've traveled all over the country or the world, and Rochester's pretty unique.
There's a lot of
So
fussing about the area, and people want to move back or move out or whatever. But in the end, if you take it all in, it's actually a good place to live.
absolutely. So I started networking back in Rochester. I'd been away for probably 13 years at that point, and identified an optical imaging high tech company in Rochester that whose board of directors was looking for a new CEO, and that company was called Holotech. Ultimately, we got acquired by one of our customers, but uh, Holotech made very high precision printing, publishing, and radiology optical systems, electro optical systems for both the printing and publishing industry and the healthcare industry. And it had a really unique technology and many patents. And, the board liked my engineering background. They liked my experience in best practices companies, the prior large companies that I'd worked for. And I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. So I actually invested in the company, became one of the 3 larger shareholders,
Hmm.
and joined as CEO. And, I knew it'd be different. But, you go from having a staff of 100 people in an organization to going out and washing the windows in the lobby before a customer visits you.
Yeah.
That's what it was, but I liked it. I liked the multitasking. I liked being in a smaller organization, being able to have a larger impact. And I was there 5 years before I engineered a sale to one of our large customers.
Your
So
political squabbles there, where you talking to yourself while you're washing windows,
yeah, yeah, right.
takes the politics right out of it.
Yeah, that took the politics right out of it.
But again,
So anyway,
I
so
think
then
that it definitely
I
shows your need for more though too. I mean, engineering a sale,
Yeah.
Even in that environment, you're finding new and you're inquisitive.
Yeah. I think it has helped me over the years to be inquisitive.
Mm-hmm.
I want to find out why things work or don't work. So, sold Holotech, did another year of consulting, and this is all in the Rochester area. Holotech, by the way, was in the Rochester Science Park off South Avenue, for those of you who are familiar with that area. And then got an invitation to go to Ultralife Batteries out in Newark, New York, to be their COO. And it was Ultralife is a publicly held company. I think now they might be doing a couple $100 million a year in sales. I haven't followed it for a while. But they were one of the early lithium-ion polymer battery designers and manufacturers at a time when consumer electronics was just starting to grow and require more and more of those batteries.
Right.
So it was a turnaround situation. For those who don't know what a turnaround is when things really suck and the business isn't doing well and you have to do something dramatically different.
Right.
So it involved new markets, cost reduction, reorganization, changing out suppliers in some cases. And I really enjoyed that. It appealed to my problem solving needs. During that time, we also dethroned our CEO, who had originally bought this business from Kodak and then spun it off as a separate public company. And that was a lot of dealings with the board of directors at the time and a pretty significant learning curve for me, but it was successful. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I decided I really wanted to be a free agent, almost like an NFL football player who's just, has been around to many teams and has just decided he's going to go on his own now and hypothetically play a whole bunch of different games with different teams in the course of his career. Mm-hmm. That's not possible in the NFL, but it is in the business world. And so I branched out after Holotech to start my own consulting practice. And I've been at it 25 years now. It's hard for me to believe. Wow. So what we do is we work with organizations, nonprofit, for-profit, high-tech, low-tech, doesn't matter. We work with them on a number of things to develop their strategic plans, their roadmap for the future, working directly with the management team and eliciting their ideas and asking them tough questions and basically facilitating the development of that plan. I do a lot of internal business process improvement. So I'll work with management teams to improve the cost, efficiency, and quality of their efforts, ranging from customer service to engineering to manufacturing, supply chain management. I do a lot of business-to-business sales coaching. So I will work with sales teams to improve the hit rate on customers they pursue and shorten the selling cycle that they're currently experiencing.
Right.
And I enjoy that a lot because I guess deep down I'm kind of a salesman. I don't know as I think about it.
You are, but you're. I think you've got a unique balance with who you are too. Is that you recognize the humanity side of it at the same time you're very process oriented. And that's one of the things I've worked with you personally and professionally. And one of the things I appreciate about you is that it's easy to start. So when you come out with a plan, it's got some measurable outcomes kind of expected from it. Rather than scrapping the whole plan, you can easily see where things need to be adjusted. You do focus in on the adjustments rather than scrapping the whole plan and starting all over again. And I think a lot of consultants I've had experience with find a lot of value in the return on their investment by scrapping the plan and starting all over again. Whereas I see you stick it out and you adjust and you're fair and very knowledgeable. For the audience, it's robrienassociates.com. If you want to take a look at what they got working on, I highly recommend. I have a personal relationship with Roger, but I also worked with him in a professional capacity, and it's remarkable how he does work.
Thanks for checking out part 1 of Chris's interview with Roger O'Brien. Part 2 is coming soon. Please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast, and of course, review it on your favorite podcast platform.